Hey everybody, welcome back to Low Life Plays. These are going to be some decks that I just loved throughout 2024. Ones that just stood the test of time and I didn't tear them apart either because, I just love playing them, piloting them, whatever. Just they do a unique mechanic that I don't really, just really speaks to me, just the way it plays out. Because as you guys know, I'm just tearing apart decks, ripping them apart, putting together new things, just trying out stuff because there's always so many cards that come out every year that it's always so fun and stuff just sparks your interest. So these are going to be the ones that withheld that test and it made it so they made it to the next year. So let's start it off with my Roalesk Apex Hybrid list. So this deck is all about Super Friends, it's Simic Super Friends, and weird counters. So if you don't know Roalesk, he is a flying trampler 4/5, but what we're really trying to build around here is his ETB effect is great, puts 2 counters on another creature you control, which is really cool. But his main thing we like is that when he dies, you proliferate and then proliferate again. So it can create some really interesting scenarios with like clones. So in the early game, our planeswalkers are kind of expensive. We do have a nice curve, which you can see on Moxfield. We have all of the lists on there. But Clever Impersonator, for example, can come down as a copy of like any permanent that can really help us in the moment. Like I've cloned Avacyn, cloned Propagandas, just cloned like really helpful things in the early game to help get us to the late part. But what they're really in here for is for the late game, we're going to clone Roalesk, have him die to the legend rule, and then just proliferate a bunch. That's the main plan we're going with. So some of our neat proliferation targets are going to be like Astral Cornucopia. You can drop this on turn 3, and it's only got 1 counter on it, but we get that thing ramped up quick. I mean, it's so fun watching our opponents have to waste removal on our mana rocks because we're getting so much value. This thing gets up to 4, 5, 9, 10 just so quickly. Lux Cannon, same thing. This comes down and then it can just start blowing up target permanents. I mean, it's such good removal with us. 3 counters is nothing. It's so easy for us to hit that. Everflowing Chalice is just another thing for Astral Cornucopia. Similar vein. This one is not colored mana, so it's a little bit, whatever. But it comes down a little earlier because typically I drop this on turn 2, just multi-kick it once, throw this thing down with 1 counter on it, start proliferating it like crazy. Same thing with these lands. I'm running the green one too. They come down, they have 2 counters, and then they just tap for 2 mana. And the level we can proliferate so quickly just lets these almost be Ancient Tombs without the downside. So it's really, really good. Yeah, this card is just absolutely insane sometimes. Most times it comes down, maybe you can get an extra turn if they don't remove it. But if it can stick, and you have an established board state, there's so many things that just give planeswalkers proliferate. We have an artifact in the list that does that, and then I got to a state where I didn't even mean to, and then you're just infinitely taking turns. So it can just be a fun little card to get you some extra value, and it also draws removal away from your mana rocks. You don't really want those to get blown up, but really, really cool card. And then of course the bread and butter of our list is just planeswalkers. So we're running a bunch more. These are just some fun ones. Vronos, he's really good at just protecting our walkers. He also has like some bounce effects. He can really help us out by removing threats. Jace, the Living Guild Pact, he's one of the ones who we love to see like a Doubling Season or a Vorinclex in play, and we just drop him and ult him and just shut everybody's plans down, right? If you ult this guy, they just shuffle their hands in their deck, and then you draw a fresh 7. Can just really skyrocket us ahead. But he also has some really good just top deck manipulation. He also has a bounce, so he's got some control elements to him. We definitely play a lot of control in the early and mid game with this list. Oko, he's Oko, right? I mean, what are you gonna do? He's just so powerful. Nissa, just really fun, ramps you, helps you kind of build into that later state. Maybe dropping this really helps with like a Doubling Season, and you drop this on turn 5. And then it just accelerates your mana so hard that you can drop a Walker and a Doubling Season on the next turn. So really, really good. And then some of the endgame stuff is Writer Replication as an example. Something that's really fun here is to Writer Replication Roalesk and just get, so what is it? You copy 5 times? Yeah, so you get 10 proliferation triggers. You can have a board of walkers that are all low, just Writer Replication Roalesk, and then take away the game. But I mean, I would say most times when Writer Replication goes off, it's pretty substantial impact. So let's go on to the next one. All right. So out of all these decks, I've just been taking some key cards out, and there's lists on Moxfield, but that's just kind of how I was going to format this video. Tetzin, Gnome Champion. So Gnome Champion, this boy, whenever he or another double-faced artifact enters the battlefield, you mill 3 cards and put an artifact from among them into your hand, and then it flips to this big boy. We don't really ever flip him. He's got some uses where you can just start flipping things, but typically we just want this guy because we're just trying to mill through our list and just get so much value and get to our win conditions. So some of the dual face cards you can run, I'm running a bunch, but just some examples like Azor's Gateway. Being able to flip this is so easy, and you can flip it with Tetzin's other side pretty consistently. But even still, you're just milling so much. Stuff like Inverted Iceberg, it has some, just some card draw. You just mill a card, draw a card, and then you're going to mill 3 and get another artifact into your hand. So super, super value. We're running a lot of artifact lands, so that way we can make consistent land drops, and it's super fun. Thematic Compass, just another double-faced card. We're running a lot of cost reducers, like Cloud Key, for example. And then the big win conditions for this list is we're going to get like a Cyberdrive Awakener, because we're just dropping all these really cheap dual-face cards, and then turn them into 4/4 flyers. We have a Grinding Station, Blasting Station situation, where you're looping like a Junk Diver with a cost reduction, or you're looping just some interesting stuff to either mill somebody out, or we have damage outs. And then we have our Karn combo, where you can just Karn them with a Mycosynth Lattice and just make it so all their permanents just don't do anything. That locks them out of the game. And then Mycosynth Golem is also something that helps to facilitate those cost reduction combos, right? I mean, affinity for artifacts, artifact creature spells you have, they have affinity for artifacts. So that's really how you can get into the Junk Station kind of stuff and just start milling through deck, getting to those points, and then we have multiple combo lines with lots of recursion. So Tetzin, I've really enjoyed him because for a while it just kind of looks like you're dropping a bunch of weird little flip cards that no one sees, but they have so much value in our deck that it's a super fun list, and I really love to bring that out. And then if I'm playing a little bit more jank, I love the Selenia Dark Angel life swapping list. So this list I bust out sometimes, like when I'm playing against new people who are like, oh, I'm playing something a little bit less powerful. So this one, it just takes a minute to get there, but it's just so fun. I mean, even if you don't win, which this deck does win, even if you're not there to win, it's just there to just swap lives, and it's just such a fun deck to pilot. And you have cards like Profane Transfusion. So Selenia essentially is a life drain outlet in the command zone. That's why she leads it. You can just pay 2 life and stack that ability, so she can protect herself when you need to. But the main thing we do with her is wait till we have like maybe a Beseiju in play that makes our spell uncounterable, and then we drop Selenia, or we have like a Grand Abolisher. We do run those effects to make sure that no one can stop our 9 mana spell that we're about to cast. But essentially what we do is we just drain all of our life at once, and then we cast a life swapping card or something to bring everyone's life totals all the way down. But I just chose these ones because they're fun. Profane Transfusion. 2 players just exchange life totals. You create an XX horror, which is the difference, but you drain yourself to 1 or 2, and then you give that away. And then we have life gain synergies. So when they give us their higher life total, it counts as life gain, and then we can Sanguine Bond somebody, or there's a lot of interesting weird cards that do stuff like that. Same thing with Axis of Mortality. Enchantment at the beginning of your upkeep, you can just start swapping life totals. You can just swap 2 every turn. Really good. This is a similar kind of card, right? Is Tainted Sigil. So this is a great way to just trigger our own Sanguine Bond effects. So when we just drain all of our life, or whatever life we have, we can just drain a ton of it, and then crack Tainted Sigil, and then gain it all back. It also you gain life equal to the total life lost by all players. So you can even do some interesting stuff if you have an effect in play that can drain when you gain. Then if someone swings out at your opponent who seems to be a bigger threat than your weird offshoot life deck, then you can crack this, gain all that life, and then just kill somebody straight out. Cards like Enduring Tenacity, right? Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So you crack Tainted Sigil, gain a ton of life back, and then just straight up deal tons of damage to somebody. Loved this card when it got out in Duskmourn. I was like, oh yeah, right into the life swap list. So some of our ways are going to be bringing everyone's life total down to our life total at once, and we have ways to make it so we can go below 0, right? So Phyrexian Unlife is a great example where you don't lose the game for having 0 or less life. So you just get infect counters after that. So someone can swing all out at you and then take you to 0, and then they have to start hitting you for infect. But now that you're at 0, you can just kill somebody, because you can just take them you can swap your life total with theirs. It's really funny to go down to 1 or 2 and then swap life totals and then kill someone with a Sign in Blood. Oh, nothing feels better than that. Even if you don't win that game, you won that game. Some examples of cards that really protect us is because once people play against the list a few times, they really kind of know what you're trying to do. So having these effects to make it so people can't just, because you'll be at low life a lot. So having cards like Stunning Reversal, where the next time you lose this turn, which is just awesome, instead you just draw a full grip and your life total becomes 1. This can really help us if we cast maybe, I don't know, a near-death experience, where we win on our upkeep if we're at 1 life exactly. So cards like this can just be so funny to just, I'm going to lose? No, I'm not going to lose. Same thing with Teferi's Protection. It's really in here just for near-death experience because, man, you drain yourself to 1, and then you just have to fend off for 3 turns, or you have to protect your enchantment. So it's really good to have a Grand Abolisher effect in front, because if you don't have protection, typically what happens is you go to 1, someone blows up your enchantment, and then you're just phased out. So, but we have lots of other things to do, right? Things like False Cure. Just such a good card to run in. It's such a funny card. You know, until the end of turn, whenever a player gains life, they lose 2 life for each 1 life they gain. So if you're fighting against, this deck is really good against life gain lists, because there's an enchantment version of this, essentially. And this one's super fun for giant burst life gain. Be like, oh, I swing at you with this huge life linker, gonna gain 20 life. And you're just like, actually, I'm gonna False Cure you, so you actually lose 20 life. Super good. And then there's other cards in here like Bloodwall or Mischievous Poltergeist that just have stackable effects to pay life. And I really like the ones where you can pay in increments of 1. You know, Selenia is really good, but sometimes you end up at 2, and it's not as fun. You know, Mischievous Poltergeist and other things, they can get you down to 1 exactly, or they can just get you down to 0 if you have like a Phyrexian Unlife or some sort of effect that allows you to be at 0 life. So that's why I kind of like those cards over having Selenia in play. Plus, they're nice blockers. That one specifically, just because you pay life and regenerate it. So it can really just come down early and protect you while you're just trying to ramp and build your board state. So next up on the list is my Ginger Sculptor man. So we're running Brenard, Ginger Sculptor. So if you're not sure what he is, you know, there's a video on the channel, but really what he does is when your creatures die, you can choose to exile them instead. And when they die, you create a copy of them that is a 1/1 food golem. Instead, you know, it's an artifact, whatever, it has all the food stuff, and then it buffs them. It gives them +2/+2 and trample. So this list, really what we're doing is it's a value list. You know, we don't really have much removal. We're trying to just be the threat that needs to be removed instead. So what we're going to do is we're going to play things that ramp us, like Wood Elves, or, you know, draw us cards like Muldrifter, things like that, and just sack them. We have a bunch of sack outlets, which we'll get into later, but we have a bunch of sack outlets that we're just going to sack, make a food copy, and then just keep getting so much value off those, you know, especially when we get like Odretok in, and then we just got our token duplicators, things like that. But a Benevolent Bodyguard, or any of these types of cards that can sack themselves to then protect our board, just get double value with Bernard out, so you can get one of these down early or the turn before him, and then he's protected, because you can sack this, give it protection, or, you know, whatever, or give it indestructible, depends on the one you're using, but you can just sack itself, protect your board, and then it comes back as a food token that can sack itself again. So really, really strong. Same thing like Boromir, he's just a stacks card that really shuts down, you know, free spells, but in addition to that, he can just sack and protect your board, and then you just get 2 uses out of these crazy cards. And then one of the underlying themes of the list is we're running all the splicers. You know, because he's making them into food golems, and then these buff golems. So they come down, they bring in a 3/3 golem, and then they often just give it like some sort of buff. You know, indestructible, flying, for example, first strike, vigilance. We're running all of these splicer effects because it feels so good to just be, all right, I'm a wing splicer, and then I'm going to sack it, and then just get another token. So you have 2 3/3s that fly, and then you just get so much value off of it. It's so good. Same thing, Vital Splicer, right? It can regenerate golems. That's pretty cool. And it comes down and it does just some work. And then the reason this list I think is so strong is it runs in a birthing pod manner, right? Our deck is built in a cadence of like 1, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s, and then it has one big 8-drop of Moonshaker Cavalry. Used to have 2, used to run Craterhoof and Moonshaker just in case one got removed, but it was just, you know, the deck was performing really, really well. Couldn't play it a lot, so I just took one out just so I didn't have that. But Birthing Pod makes this list absolutely crazy. Right now you can sack your Golem Maker or whatever, your Vital Splicer, for example, get a copy of it, and then go tutor something else that costs more. It's just such a strong card. You got to blow this up. And then we have just like kind of a similar effect here. You know, Prime Speaker, she does pretty much the same thing, right? Sacrifice a creature, search your library for a creature with equal to 1 plus the sacrifice creature's mana cost. You can only do these at sorcery speed, so just keep that in mind, but it's really, really, really powerful in this list. And then we have these types of effects too, right? Eldritch Evolution that can just go do the same thing. Gives a little bit more flexibility because it's you can get a creature from your library with mana value X or less, where X is X plus 2. So this one's a little bit more flexible if you don't know what you want to get. So I always say, if you're going to be interested in building Brenard, just keep the deck list handy, because sometimes you're like, is that removal creature, is that ramp creature, is it 3, or am I running a 2-drop, or is it 4? Just because I'm swapping cards out all the time as new stuff comes in. But it's a really fun list to pilot, and you get to make gingerbreads. You're just a little baker boy, Like, what am I doing? Why am I the threat? And then last, I'm going to run Miss Bumbleflower. She's, every time, I just find myself grabbing this list every time I'm going to go to Friday Night Magic, or I'm going to, like, a friend's house. It's just so fun. You get to play this, like, super friendly deck that for a majority of the time you're sowing discourse of, like, oh, giving that person cards, giving that person treasure. It's just super fun, and it can really play into politics if that's what you're into or you like to do that. I love to do it. Love to just talk the talk. But Miss Bumbleflower helps facilitate that by just having a very, very good win con also that you're building to that no one really sees until it's too late. So Miss Bumbleflower, every time you cast a spell, you force someone to draw a card, and then you put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature. So you can also use this politically. And then if it's the second time it happens during a single turn, you draw 2 cards. So she can refill your hand, and you're just trying to cast, like, 2 spells. So that's Bumbleflower. Some of the fun, like, little cards that we're running are going to be like Glunch. Be like, see guys, we're a group huggy. This one really, really helps to just really facilitate that, and it's an 0/5 blocker that we could just make huge with Bumbleflower. But either way, at the end of your turn, people are going to be fighting for that card draw. They're going to be fighting for that treasure. So it's so good to just be like, all right, if you don't swing at me, you can have that, or you can have this, or you can always just give yourself the thing that you want the most, and just, normally it's going to be drawing cards or treasure for you, but it's so good. I just love playing politics. And then we got stuff like Illusionist's Gambit. No one sees this one coming. Cast a spell only during the declare blocker step on an opponent's turn. So someone's like, okay, we got to stop Bumbleflower. Too strong. They're clearly going for something. There's always one of them. And then you're like, okay, they swing out at you. You remove all attacking creatures from combat, untap them, and then they have to attack someone else. So it's like, it's just so good. I love it. And then stuff like this, Quain. People are going to just love all your card draw. People just love to draw cards. They don't even care that you're also drawing cards, or it's so good, and he comes down so early, and he's a 1/3, can really help us. And then we are running a lot of counter magic to protect our combo, and also to just protect the table. We are going to be policing a little bit. So these are just some examples. We're just running pretty classic stuff like Dovin's Veto, Arcane Denial, Counterspell. We have a lot of other ones that we're running in the list, but those are just some of the major hits. And then our combo. We have 2 combos in the list, and they're both kind of focused around really what we want to do is infinitely cast. So we just want to cast things and then mill everybody out, because Bumbleflower is not a May. I'm not giving you the choice to draw a card. I'm forcing you to draw a card. So, and it only lets us draw on the second trigger. So then after that, we're making everybody draw their cards. So here's one of the examples of how we do it. We drop Allurin, which any player may cast a creature card with total mana value 3 or less without paying its mana cost. And you can do it at flash speed. So Allurin comes out, and then you just drop... we have a few others like Shrieking Drake and things like that, but we run 3 copies of a creature that can do this effect, where when it enters, bounce a creature to your hand. So they're all 3 CMC or less, so essentially you just come in, you go boom, drop White Mane Lion, put White Mane Lion back in your hand, and you're just constantly casting the same creature over and over and over again, and then just locking everybody out. And if someone does have like a Titan or a Shuffle Titan, one of the Eldrazi that just makes it so you can't mill them, just mill them out, and then build just put all those +1/+1 counters on Bumbleflower and just commander damage them dead. So has an out that way too, because this combo just, you're casting infinitely. You can just make your board as huge as you want, and then there you go. And then we're running Soul Guide Lantern. So Soul Guide Lantern combos with this list with a Lotus Petal and our makeshift Eternal Witness. The one that you get +1/+1 counters every time it gets a +1/+1 counter on it, you get a permanent back from your graveyard. So essentially, you just cast Soul Guide Lantern, cast trigger, put the counter from Miss Bumbleflower onto it, get back Lotus Petal, or reverse it, where you play Lotus Petal. And the key thing here is that they can just sacrifice without paying their mana cost. So you can use anything that's like a 1 to 0 drop that can sacrifice itself. These were just the best ones that I found for values that just had purpose outside of it. You know, Lotus Petal can help accelerate you in the early game, and then you can get it back and start the combo later. Soul Guide Lantern can really just be there to just start shutting down opponents and just, you know, exile their graveyard. It's always just really nice to have Soul Guide Lantern in play when you're playing against someone's graveyard. There's so much recursion nowadays. It's just really nice to have this as an answer, and it's a recurable answer for us. So that is why I like Bumbleflower. It is just such a fun list to play. You get to pretend to be the friend when really you're a huge threat and no one sees it coming. And they just, you know, and I've played the list so many times, no one ever really cares. They're just like, oh, well, I got to draw like 20 cards. So yeah, you can win. Doesn't matter to me. So anyway, that is the guides and just kind of the top decks that I've just had the most fun piloting, and the lists that have just withstood the urge for me to just rip them apart and just assemble something new, because man, it is hard, as you guys know as fellow Magic players. But outside of that, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, you know, and you like this video, just drop a like, drop a comment, subscribe if you like me that much. But outside of that, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!